And you're watching Rush Hour, where we bring you the day's top developments condensed in a half-hour show. So our top story today, the US debt ceiling crisis. While US politicians seem closer to a deal now as the June 1 deadline approaches, it is learned that caps have been proposed on discretionary spends for 2 years, while the debt limit will also be raised for 2 years. Republicans want to slash the budget for IRS that sends tax auditors to the doors of wealthy Americans. On the other hand, President Biden says the burden of budget cuts shouldn't fall on the middle class. So, to talk about that divide, we now have Mr. Hugh Johnson, Chairman and Chief Economist, Hugh Johnson Economics, joining us. So, thank you very much, sir, for joining us here. What I want to really understand is, where are we now? Where is the Congress, as in the Democrats and Republicans, are at now? Is the glass half full or half empty? How do you see it?
I think we're getting close to a deal. Speaker McCarthy of the U.S. House of Representatives has just made a statement that effectively we are close to a deal, but we're not at a deal. So my guess is, and it's only a guess now, but it's a pretty good guess, is that they're going to reach an agreement. It's going to be an 11th hour agreement. They will agree to raise the debt ceiling for a period of 2 years. And the offset will be the Democrats essentially are going to have to accept a number of reductions in the 22 budget, but also, and this is pretty important, also the 23 budget, the spending budget for 2023 cannot be higher than the 2022. There's a lot of details. Most of what we're talking about as far as spending cuts, though, comes in the area of non-defense discretionary spending, which is a number of popular programs: child care, public safety, environmental reduction, environmental protection in the U.S. There's a number of programs that are going to be affected, and people will be affected, but there's a lot of detail. Believe me, there's a lot of detail. They will reach an agreement, I'm pretty sure. They will raise the debt ceiling. We will have some cuts in spending in both 2022 and 23, and they will affect individuals across the board.
Right, Mr. Johnson, we'll talk about the specifics of the deal in just a few minutes from now. But first, I want to understand that although there are negotiations around certain aspects, but are these negotiations happening after external pressure? Is this move more of a move to calm the markets and to instill the confidence that everything is hunky-dory, especially in light of the credit rating cut?
Well, the problem is, if you don't raise the debt ceiling, and you hit the nail on the head, the big problem, the starting problem, is that the debt rating of U.S. debt would be reduced. It's already been reduced by one agency. Fitch is now saying or threatening that if indeed the debt ceiling was not raised, that they would reduce the rating on U.S. debt. That, of course, implies or means higher interest rates. And when you're talking about higher interest rates, you're talking about reductions in spending or the increase in expenses, obviously, to buy a house or to buy an automobile. Consumer spending would be hit, and it's likely to cause a U.S. recession. Remember, we're getting close. Yes, I know the economy expanded 1.3% in the first quarter, but it's in the process of slowing if we take into consideration third, fourth quarter, first quarter of 2023. And what I think will be the outcome for the second quarter of 2023. The economy is slowing. It's getting close to a hard landing. And if they don't raise the debt ceiling, and it leads to, obviously, a reduction in rating and an increase in interest rates, we're talking about a hard landing for the U.S. And let's keep in mind, the U.S. is an important export destination for countries throughout the world. So it would be a problem, not just for the U.S. economy, but for the global economy.
Right, Mr. Johnson, what I also want to understand from you, let's talk about the politics of the deal. I mean, towards which party is the public sentiment veering more towards? Who's winning this game of optics as far as, deal specifics are concerned? Is it more towards Democrats or Republicans?
I don't think it's towards anyone, to be honest with you. And that's primarily because a lot of the specifics of the deal are not very well known. You know, the Republicans are talking about spending cuts, And to some U.S. People in the U.S., they don't want to see spending cuts, particularly because it might imply that the U.S. economy, which is close to a recession, will go into a recession. At the same time, there's plenty of folks that say, look, President Biden is absolutely right. The spending cuts or the budget considerations should be kept separate from the debt ceiling issue. The debt ceiling should be raised. That's a separate issue. And then we should discuss spending cuts. There are people on both sides of this argument or discussion. I wouldn't give the edge to the Democrats or the Republicans. It's intensely political, but at the same time, I don't think I give the edge on one side or the other to U.S. sentiment.
Right, Mr. Johnson. I understand that all the deal details are not out yet, so it's very difficult to sort of ascertain, the optics are in which party's favor. But from whatever is out, it just seems like the Democrats perhaps are winning the optics game. Why I say so is because one argument in favor of that is that, it seems like the Democrats are favoring the working class while burdening the rich. And the second argument is that by making this happen at the 11th hour, aren't they giving out the narrative that they are saving Americans from a potential catastrophe?
Yeah, but keep in mind that I think everybody, not everybody, but lots and lots of people accept the fact that the U.S. deficit as a percentage of gross domestic product, nominal gross domestic product, which is the way we really look at this or measure it, is very high. It's coming down off extraordinarily high levels in 2020 and 21 as we took steps to spend money to try to get ahead of the pandemic. But we have deficits that are very high as a percentage of nominal GDP. And as a result of that, something has to be done about that. And holding the line on spending in the eyes of many is really the way to go. Now, you're absolutely right. It, to some extent, will affect the middle class. And from that point of view, the sentiment is on the side of the Democrats. They don't want to see those cuts. So nobody wants to see those cuts in spending that will affect members of the middle class. I accept that. We all accept that. But at the same time, we know we have a problem, and the problem is deficits and debt as a percentage of GDP. Too high, something has to be done about it. I don't know which way I'd lean, but I really worry about cuts to the middle class.
Taxing the middle class, and this is what I wanted to focus on in my next question. Very briefly, Mr. Johnson, we're running out of time. What does it really mean from whatever has come out, whatever information has come out as far as the deal contours are concerned? What's in it for the middle class?
What's in it for the middle class? Cuts in education, number one. You're going to see that. We're talking about work requirements for those that are receiving Medicaid, work requirements for those that are receiving food stamps. That's not good news for the middle class. That's going to put a burden on them. We're talking about a number of other cuts, such as public safety. We're talking about a lot of small cuts that will affect the middle class. This is not going to be good for all Americans, but particularly for the middle class. But I don't think, and I think this is the important thing I'm going to say, it's going to be nearly as severe or draconian as some people seem to think. It's going to affect the middle class, but not nearly as much as you think.
Right. All right, Mr. Johnson, thanks very much for joining us here on ET Now. Appreciate your timing for speaking to us. In fact, for all our viewers, remember June 1 is the day that the debt ceiling date crashes, and hopefully the deal will be reached before that. We'll leave the story here and moving on